Hi guys, we are in chapter 2 and we're looking at section 2.2, adding integers. So when we're talking about adding integers, a couple of good concepts for us to have is these two words that are very similar, opposites and additive inverse. The opposites, the word opposites in this case means two numbers that have the same absolute value, but have different signs. So for example, we know that, let's try 3 and -3 have the same absolute value symbol, right? Or same absolute value, not symbol, but the same absolute value. However, they have different signs. So any number, 5, -5/3, and 5/3, these guys are considered opposites. So opposites are really very similar to this concept of additive inverse in that when you take additive inverses, basically when you take a number and you add it to its opposite, you get 0. So you know you've got additive inverses when you add them together and you get 0 because those two values have to be opposite one another. So I guess really that's it. Let's go ahead. Let's keep moving. So if we look at example 1, we're going to add integers using a number line. And this is something that many of you probably do not need to do at this time. And that's okay if you don't. We're just going to talk about what it means to add numbers in this way. So I'm going to put down 0, -1, -2, -3, so forth and so on. And what I want to do is think about what it means to add these numbers together. So if I start at -1, so oftentimes you could look at this first number as your starting place, and when I'm to add -5, it means I'm to go back 5. So when you add a negative, it means you're going back in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you see that I've landed at -6. So -1 plus -5 is equal to -6. I am going to suggest that if you're not really comfortable with adding and subtracting sign numbers, there's going to be a special video that's not required that I'd like you to look at. It can be helpful. It's about hot and cold cubes. It's kind of a silly story that kind of gives you some insight into adding and subtracting negative and positive numbers, even a little bit with multiplication. So be on the lookout for that if this is feeling confusing. All right, let's look at example 2. We're going to add integers with the same sign. So here's the rule. The overarching rule is that when you're adding integers with the same sign, you just add and you keep the sign the same. So here we've got the same sign, 3 plus 6 we know to be 9, but we've got to keep the sign the same, so I'm going to make sure and put in -9. So in a sense, I like to think about this as if I lost $3 or if I lost 3 pounds and then I lost 6 more pounds, altogether you lose 9 pounds. Or if you lost money, or if you, whatever thing you can think about diminishing a certain amount, the overarching diminished amount is -9, right? Here with 2 plus 4, this is pretty simple, 6. We don't have to put the positive sign, but if you like to do that, you can do that as well. Next example, we're going to add integers with different signs, and this is where it starts to get a little bit more challenging, but a lot of you already have this together, so just bear with me. If we have 12 plus a -16, what we're recognizing that we have two numbers with different signs, and our rule says when adding numbers with different signs, we will subtract the two numbers and then take the sign of the number with the highest absolute value. Let me kind of make this a little bit more plain. We're going to think of in our mind, here's our thought bubble, we're going to think of 12 as the absolute value of itself, and we're going to think of 16 as the absolute value of itself. And we're just going to subtract 16 minus 12. So that's what I mean when I subtract the two numbers. Just subtract as you normally would the smaller number from the bigger, 16 minus 12, when we think about the absolute value of the two numbers, and then you get the number 4 as your final answer. But that's not it. Now we need to go back, and now we need to take the sign of the number with the highest absolute value. -16 had the highest absolute value, so the negative will be here. All right, we're going to do a similar thing here. I'm not going to do the thought bubble because I think we can do this in our head. The difference between 7 and 5, just looking at the absolute value, would be 2. And then the sign of the bigger number, the bigger absolute value, well, -7 has a bigger absolute value, so my answer is -2. And again, I made all these negatives. I'm going to do another example. -20 plus 4 is really just a subtraction problem that gives me 16, since 20 has negative in front of it, we're going to put a negative. Oh, good, there's another one. Okay, so 8 and still negative. Oh man, I messed up. I made all of these negative answers. I'm going to give you one where it's going to be positive. Just be patient with me. So I'm going to subtract that 13 minus 8, and I'm going to get 5, and the answer is negative since 13 is bigger. What if I had negative 9 plus positive 15? Again, I would subtract the two. 15 minus 9 is going to give me 6, and then the answer is going to remain positive because 15 is bigger, and so it's positive. So hopefully that makes good sense. All right, let's talk about example 4. We're going to solve equations. So here's what's going on. A whale is at a depth of 275 feet below the surface of the water. After 10 minutes, she rose 194 feet. What is the current depth of the whale? So we know the initial place where the whale was 275, negative because it was below sea level or below the surface of the water. And then we rose, to rise is to go up, or she rose 194 feet up. So this problem basically is negative 275 plus 194. So, and I initially thought it was 91, but it's actually 81. So there, let me change that. So the difference between these two numbers, the absolute value of these two numbers would be 81. But since the larger number, the larger looking number is negative, I'm going to make this a negative 81. So she is negative 81 feet below, is it feet? Yeah, negative 81 feet below the surface of the water. All right, let's see if we can do this last one. So we're going to add more than 2 integers. And when we do this, we're just going to take it 2 at a time. So negative 6 plus a negative 15, we're adding the same sign, so we're going to maintain negativity here. So we get a negative 21 plus a positive 6, but now we're adding different signs. We're going to subtract, take the sign of the higher. The higher number is 21 if I'm looking at the absolute value, so I'm going to rock a negative here. 21 minus 6 is going to leave me with 15. So my final answer is 15. Quick note, it would have probably made better sense for me to look at these guys and say, hey, you two are additive inverses. When you add them together, you get 0, and that would have eliminated some of the drama that I just caused. How do we have the power to do that? We have the power to do that because we can move things around. That's the commutative property, and then we can associate two things together that we want to add and that we want to take precedence over other things. All right, let's see if we can do this in a more clever way. So we have 7 plus negative 1 plus 26 plus negative 13. I don't know. I think I'm just going to go from left to right. I think that's fine for this problem. 7 plus a negative 1 is going to give me a positive 6. To that, I'm going to add 26, and then I'm going to add a negative 13. So what this is going to become is 6 plus 26 is going to give me 32, and then I'm going to add a negative 13. In this case, I'm really going to end up subtracting 32 minus 13, which is going to give me 19, that is, and I think that's it, and it's going to be a positive 19 since the 32 is positive. Let's go ahead and take a look at this last one. So I've got 4 plus a negative 2, which we know to be 2, plus negative 7. 2 plus a negative 7 is going to give me 5 because I'm subtracting, taking the sign of the higher, and I'm done. All right. That assignment is not yours. You'll do the assignment in your packet, and it looks like we've come to another end of a wonderful opportunity to learn. Hopefully this isn't too bad. Let me know if you need help, and I look forward to making that hot and cold cubes video if you guys feel like you need the extra help. All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.